A 10th day in court for closing arguments in the Marilyn Mosby trial. What we're learning in a live report.
Two kids accused of attacking a Butchers Hill woman months ago are facing a laundry list of charges, while the victim is calling the move too little, too late.
A battle in Baltimore County is brewing over a plan to turn decaying shopping centers into mixed-use housing and retail, while residents say the plan will lead to real issues for the people already living nearby.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
Today we're asking that you be the lawyer, the judge, and the jury. Father God bless her, and only you know how.
A group of people supporting Marilyn Mosby gather outside the federal courthouse in Greenbelt, praying and asking for help through her trial. Well, today, the defense and prosecution both made their closing arguments for former City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's mortgage fraud trial. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Let's go right to Mackenzie Frost. She's been in the courtroom all day, and she joins us with the very latest. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mary and Kai, the jury spent most of the day today listening to the closing arguments from both the prosecutors and the defense. And right now, the judge is, in fact, reading the jury instructions before deliberations are set to begin. But during the closing arguments, we have to remember this is the final pitch to the jury from both the prosecutors and the defense. Prosecutors telling the jury they believe Marilyn Mosby lied over and over and over again in order to get the favorable interest rate on one of the homes, as well as secure and purchase both vacation homes in Florida to begin with. The jury also hearing directly from prosecutors that Marilyn Mosby was found guilty on 2 counts of perjury in the same courtroom less than 3 months ago. But on the flip side, the defense argues Marilyn Mosby was in a loving and trusting marriage with her now ex-husband, Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby, and they say that she was simply relying on the advice from professionals when she purchased those homes, and that she did not knowingly make any false statements on the mortgage applications. But again, prosecutors are telling the jury to use their common sense, bringing up the fact that Marilyn Mosby did not ask for specific proof that the tax lien that was on the home in Baltimore had been taken care of before she filed the mortgage applications on both of those properties. Mary?
And Mackenzie, we are on week 4 now of the trial. What comes next?
Yeah, that is the big question, and is definitely top of line for Judge Grigsby right now. Again, she is just bringing the jury back into the courtroom after an hour-long lunch break, and the jury instructions are being read, which, as we know, could take a significant amount of time. So at this point, it's likely the jury could get sent home and begin deliberations in the morning, but I should have a better answer for you coming up at 5. We're live outside the federal courthouse. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. We will continue to bring you the latest on this trial as closing arguments end and the jury deliberation begins. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5, we're talking with a legal expert about what that process could look like and when we might get a verdict.
Fox 45 News has been following the years-long legal saga surrounding Marilyn Mosby since the beginning. For our full coverage on her case, head to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Breaking news tonight, 3 teens are under arrest for shooting a 16-year-old in Rosedale Sunday. Baltimore County Police say around 5:15 last night, a 16, 17, and 19-year-old attacked the victim, shooting him in the lower body. The victim was taken to the hospital. Police did not share his condition, but said he was stable. All of the teenage suspects are being charged as adults with attempted first-degree murder, assault, and firearms charges. We'll continue to update this story as more news comes into our newsroom.
It's only a few years that we have these kids and are really able to affect change. So when you lose 6 months because DJS is ineffective, that is a tremendous amount of time for these kids.
Well, the 2 juveniles accused of attacking a Butchers Hill woman last November now facing a laundry list of charges. That's according to the victim, who says initially she was told the teens would face no consequences. Fox 45 has more on why the victim is calling the delayed action too little too late. Rebecca Pryor is live with the very latest on this case. Rebecca?
Yeah, Mary, while the victim says she is relieved to finally be seeing justice served, she also says she questions why it took 3 months to arrive. You'll remember this case was all caught on surveillance camera back in November. You can see 2 teens tackling the victim to the ground, then wrestling her for her car keys. Police say the teens were only deterred from stealing the car because they couldn't drive a stick shift. Following the arrest, the victim says a DJS officer initially told her the teens wouldn't be charged at all due to their age. However, just last week, she received confirmation from the state's attorney's office that both the 12 and 14-year-old suspects would be charged with several counts of theft, assault, and robbery. Public defender Roya Hanna, who has no involvement in this case, explains why these charges can still be made even under current juvenile justice reform laws, which block children under the age of 13 from facing certain charges such as attempted auto theft.
As long as the top charge is a violent charge, then they can charge everything that is what is considered a lesser included count. So in a carjacking situation, a carjacking is a violent crime, but theft of the vehicle is not. So you can still charge it if the carjacking is charged as well.
And in this case, robbery is considered a violent charge under the law. Now, as far as why these charges took 3 months to come in, Hannah believes this was likely due to DJS's slow intake process. In determining whether or not cases need to be referred to the court system for criminal charges, DJS officers are legally only supposed to take 25 days to review a case. But Hannah says more often than not, DJS is not meeting those deadlines.
They need extensions for every single report they have to produce. It's supposed to be 30 days. They take 90 days. There's a lot of different mechanisms that they can use to just sweep these things under the rug so they don't have to provide services. And I think this comes down to an issue of resources with the department.
Now, Fox 45 has reached out to DJS asking, in this case specifically, why did it take so long for charges to be issued? DJS telling us that due to confidentiality laws, they are not able to speak on this case. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. The youth crime crisis that we saw surge last year is slowing down in 2024. In addition to last night's shooting in Baltimore County, we're learning about another incident this weekend involving guns and juveniles in Anne Arundel County. On Saturday, officers responded to the Embassy Suites in Linthicum Heights, that's in Anne Arundel County, for reports of a fight. They found more than 200 people in the lobby fighting. 2 teens were arrested, a 15 and 16-year-old from Baltimore. Witnesses say they were wearing ski masks and had a gun. They're both facing charges.
Well, after calls for change from parents, police, and prosecutors across the state, Democratic lawmakers are putting forward a new crime bill aimed at holding kids accountable. The bills would increase funding for DJS's ankle monitoring program, change how cases are handled within DJS, and allow children under 13 to be charged with certain crimes. Some Republicans say they're excited to see Maryland Democrats acknowledge there is a problem with the current juvenile justice laws.
I was encouraged by the tone of the rhetoric that we heard today, and we also appreciate that they recognize the system is broken.
Republican Senator Justin Reedy only pointed to one missing priority, saying he wishes Democrats introduce legislation that would repeal the Child Interrogation Protection Act. The current law requires an attorney to be present before juveniles can be questioned by police. Well, coming up at 4:30, we are talking with a political analyst about the governor's decision to back the bill and the rift that could cause with the head of the Department of Juvenile Services, Vincent Schiraldi.
Controversies building in Baltimore County over a proposal to rezone certain abandoned areas to residential and commercial spaces. The county council is set to make decisions on that legislation this month. Fox 45's Jessica Babb is live in Lutherville, showing us why this debate is heating up. Jessica.
Well, the Baltimore County Council, they will be talking about this issue next week, and they could be voting on it by the end of the month. But some council members, like Councilmember Wade Catch, say they're concerned that this bill could lead to more urbanization. It's a developer-friendly bill, and they also say it could give them less choice in the decision-making process.
I found the legislation to be shocking.
It's a mixed-use zoning bill that's getting mixed reaction.
We think it is long overdue. This is the type of sea change that our county has been waiting for.
Baltimore County Councilmember Wade Catch opposing a bill which aims to develop dilapidated commercial hubs.
This is going to affect people all across our county.
In the letter, he says more developments like large apartments would be allowed to pop up all along the York corridor without addressing the needs for infrastructure.
Having the developers be allowed to do it by right without regard for adequate public facility, overcrowded schools, sewer capacity, roads, things like that, and not having the county council involved seems kind of scary to me.
Not to mention, Catch says county council could be bypassed in the development process for projects, something he says is, quote, shocking and disturbing.
It is a blatant attempt to strip the Baltimore County Council of their land use authority, and it severely limits the public's opportunity to weigh in.
While Baltimore County leaders say it's critical for economic development,
Baltimore County actually lags behind other jurisdictions.
Olszewski says if the legislation passes, community members could still give their input on projects.
Is limited to these specific areas. It's not as though this is going to open up floodgates. This is just an opportunity for us to finally channel in dollars into revitalization projects.
But the jury's still out if this bill will pass.
We know that that's an area that needs redevelopment. We want something good to happen there, but we also want it to be something that's thoughtful.
Councilmember Catch didn't respond to our request for an interview today, but of course you can be sure as council continues to talk about this issue, we'll let you know what they decide. Live in Baltimore County, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Jessica, thank you. And that brings us to our question of the day. Whose interest does Johnny Olszewski have in mind in Baltimore County? The poll just opened. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. And coming up, the changes lawmakers are pushing for after Project Baltimore report revealed a convicted sex offender going to a Baltimore City school.
A Baltimore mother says her daughter's killer is walking free because of a former prosecutor's mistake. Her calls for accountability in the justice system.
New poll numbers are in, and they're concerning for the president. I'm Kayla Gaskins with that story straight ahead.
The sunny, dry weather is continuing. Another beautiful day. 48 degrees outside right now, but that is not going to last a whole lot longer. We're going to get a temperature drop tomorrow. 60s may be on the way. And then following that, a stormier pattern. Maybe it's going to be returning. We're going to show you the latest data coming up.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Taking a live look at Capitol Hill now, where lawmakers are battling over the new border bill from the Senate. While the bill's chances are looking slimmer and slimmer in the House, there's no guarantee it'll sail through the Senate either. One of the chief negotiators of the bill, Senator James Lankford, predicted it would get 70-plus votes. That looks unlikely, though, as Republican Senators Josh Hawley, Mike Lee, and Ron Johnson oppose it, and more could follow. Democratic leaders and Lankford are making the case for the bill.
I am proud Leader McConnell and I, who disagree on many issues, have never worked so closely together on legislation as we did on this.
And you're saying if this was in place now, the border would be shut down?
That's correct. The border would be shut down. Not only did the border be shut down today, it had been shut down every single day the last 4 months.
Lankford says we would have had 1 million fewer illegal migrants inside the U.S. if the provisions in the bill were law to begin with. On the other side of the Capitol, House Speaker Mike Johnson says the bill is dead on arrival. Well, one key immigration policy question was left out of the bill, a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, or people brought into the U.S. illegally as children. Granting dreamers legal status has been a top priority for Democrats for more than a decade. There are well over 500,000 dreamers currently in limbo in the U.S. The DACA program designed to help them is on hold due to court challenges. Well, the border has become one of the top issues in the presidential race. This week, a new poll is out showing Donald Trump may hold a slight lead over President Biden in a potential rematch. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has details.
Former President Trump gaining ground.
Now at 5 points, this is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump.
9 months out from Election Day, and just 37% of voters approve of Biden, placing him in a weaker position than George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and even Donald Trump during their incumbent runs for a second term. Biden is also struggling with his base.
He's really got to be concerned about the fact that he is not polling well with the people who really delivered the presidency to him in 2020, specifically people of color and persons under 30 years old.
Trump and Biden are statistically tied among Hispanics, which alarms Democrats. It's been 20 years since a Republican presidential candidate has seen this level of support.
The data shows President Biden struggling on some key issues. When it comes to handling the economy, 55% prefer Donald Trump, just 33% prefer President Biden. Biden doing even worse when it comes to handling securing the border. That's where 57% prefer Donald Trump, just 22% trust Biden.
The bipartisan border security bill going through Congress could help boost voters' confidence in Biden on immigration, Belt points out, even if Senate Republicans block it.
He has the ability to say, look, I was going to work with the Republicans to give them exactly what they wanted, and they wouldn't work with me.
Belt predicts we'll also hear Biden talk a lot about abortion as he works to win back younger voters. The president has bigger hurdles. Only 23% believe he has the physical and mental health to do the job, a 15-point slip from 2020. But there is a wild card lurking in the wings. Data shows if Trump is convicted, he loses support. That scenario gives Biden a slight but important lead for the rematch. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Well, some wicked weather out west. Heavy rain causing intense flooding in California. Take a look at this. This is some of the damage to buildings in the Hollywood Hills. The flooding causing the ground beneath these homes to give out. The house is torn apart by those floods. We're also seeing scenes like this across the state. This video from San Jose showing rescue crews helping people who were trapped by enlarged rivers in the area. Local first responders urging people to stay safe.
Stay out of fast-moving water. Don't go to the LA River. Don't go to the San Gabriel River and look at the water. Those are extremely dangerous areas.
Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency for 8 counties, allowing the National Guard to respond if needed.
And Mary and I were talking about this last night when I was out there last year and the year before. California getting hammered. Now, this is their stormy season. Believe it or not, what they are getting now is going to have an impact on us. We'll talk about that in just a minute. First of all, another day just like we had over the weekend. Not bad. Upper 40s across the area. And, well, the only thing we're contending with for the time being is still those coastal flood advisories. We're expecting this will be the case, especially around Anne Arundel County as we move into the next couple of days. These are higher than normal tides. Those areas that tend to get a little more water and a little bit of flooding may be the only places you have to worry about. Another place you don't want to drive through, salt water. It eats up your car. Just try to avoid that if you can. All right, so as we move through tonight, it's going to be more of what you have been dealing with, which is not too terrible. We drop down to some pretty cold temperatures overnight, upper 20s, low 30s, and then the sunshine comes out as we move into your Tuesday. Temperatures there a little bit colder. We're talking mid 40s at best as we move through your Tuesday. So it's a little chillier, but we'll be right back to the upper 40s, around 50 degrees as we head into Wednesday. And we step up from there. We'll see our temperatures recovering even further. All right, California getting hammered again. These storm systems are coming in off the Pacific, bringing in tons of moisture. A lot of that energy is going to track across the eastern United States. It will be at a weaker form, but we're going to get some impacts from that. One system also pounding the United States is down there into Florida right now. They've had all sorts of severe weather, tornadoes, flooding, and that one's on the way out. We're not going to get anything from there. So here's what you can expect and what we're tracking from here on out. The colder air is going to be continuing with these northerly winds. But once we get into this section, you see those south winds, that's going to warm things up. We'll be getting into that as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, and then by Friday especially. But the system that's hitting the Pacific now, it's going to get all the moisture wrung out over the Pacific and over the Rockies and even over the Appalachians, so it's mostly dry as that front passes by. Another system is a possibility. One computer model blows this thing up into a monster of a storm system next week. That's just one model, though. Another one shows absolutely nothing. So this is quite an interesting time. We're going to watch and see what this pattern's going to bring. But at the very least, you can expect a stormier pattern to set up as we move in closer to Valentine's Day. It could be pretty busy, but still very much up for debate whether this is going to happen or one of those systems will just not even show up at all. So a lot of things can happen between now and then. Stay tuned. We'll be tracking it carefully. Next few days, it's just going to be mostly a warm-up from Tuesday onward, and we'll be hitting the 50s by Thursday, Friday, 60s possible by Saturday. How about that? Unfortunately, it does come with a small chance of rain, but here's the good news. Come out and visit me at the Baltimore Health Expo. I'll be out there starting in the morning, and we'd love to meet you. You can try out the green screen. It's going to be a spectacular event, and I'd love to meet a whole bunch of you guys. So come meet me out there on Saturday.
The road to the big game is sponsored by Royal Farms.
Well, the teams are in Las Vegas for the big game. Kansas City and San Francisco both arriving at a private airplane hangar. Players were greeted with some iconic Las Vegas performers, of course, a crowd of Elvis impersonators and showgirls. The two teams are set to square off at Allegiant Stadium this weekend on Sunday. A new push to make sure people know when sexual predators are in the classrooms alongside their children. Project Baltimore joins us live. The Secretary of State heading back to the Middle East as another U.S. base is attacked, the latest on the conflict and the efforts to avoid a full-blown war. Fox 45 News tracking the latest on the fighting in the Middle East tonight. Early this morning, more attacks were launched against U.S. bases in Syria. At least 6 Kurdish fighters at the base were killed. No Americans died. The militant group Islamic Resistance in Iraq claimed responsibility. The attack comes after the U.S. launched a series of retaliatory strikes on Iranian-backed militants. The U.S. is warning it will retaliate further if American forces continue to be targeted in the Middle East. Today, Houthi rebels said they plan to ignore American warnings and continue attacking ships in the Red Sea. They added the American bombing in Yemen is only strengthening their resolve to disrupt trade in the Middle East and continue military operations against Israel as well. Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back in the Middle East this week, attempting to de-escalate the situation in Gaza. The State Department says Blinken's goals for the trip are to get an agreement together for all hostages in the Israel-Hamas war to be released and to set up a humanitarian pause for people in Gaza. Blinken is also set to visit Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the West Bank. Well, getting the hostages back will be a difficult task. Israeli leaders say their army will only pull out once all hostages are returned and Hamas is destroyed. The terror group has said multiple times they will only release the hostages if Israel ends its offensive and releases Palestinian prisoners. Meantime, the civilian casualties in the fighting continue to rise. Project Baltimore found a 15-year-old admitted rapist was attending a city school without parents or other students knowing about it. The new push for change in Annapolis to make sure it doesn't happen again. Maryland Democrats' new crime bill gained support from Governor Moore, even though it does not match up with policies from his DJS head, Vincent Schiraldi. We're examining the governor's changing stance. A mother says the broken justice system let her daughter's killer get off scot-free, why she's blaming a former prosecutor for mishandling the case.
No justice for Janai Whedon. The mother of a murdered teen believes the city failed her daughter by improperly charging the teen's accused killer.
Alexa Ashwell sat down with her mother, joins us live now after questioning the city state's attorney's office. Alexa.
Yes, Janai Whedon was murdered back in 2021. At that time, Marilyn Mosby was the Baltimore City State's attorney. Her office, this mother believes, incorrectly charged the man accused of killing her daughter. Sitting next to 15-year-old Janai Whedon's picture, Mother Tabitha Gary recalls the moment a jury last week reached their verdict in her daughter's murder trial. 18-year-old Zachariah Allison not guilty of first and second-degree murder.
It was painful. It was hurtful.
But with that hurt, the mother says, was frustration.
I feel like he was incorrectly charged.
Janai Whedon was killed in Baltimore back in August 2021. According to charging documents, following an ongoing dispute between two groups, Zachariah Allison, who was 16 at the time, walked out of a home and, quote, began shooting indiscriminately. Janai, who was about a half block away, was hit by one of the bullets.
Went all the way up the block and hit my daughter in the back of the neck.
The 15-year-old, who was just days away from starting her sophomore year at Carver Votech High School, who thrived in cosmetology, was killed.
She just was a great kid, had a whole life ahead of her.
Fast forward to last week. Allison stood trial for the murder of Janai. A jury found the 18-year-old not guilty of charges related to her murder, but guilty of reckless endangerment, assault, and possession of a firearm by a minor. The mother questioning, given the facts of the case outlined during trial, why the city state's attorney's office charged the teen with first and second-degree murder, but not manslaughter.
To me, it's an insult. It hurts me because he's able to come back out on this charge, on the streets, and never be tried for it again, despite all the evidence that led to him and all the evidence that was there that could have, for manslaughter.
Back in 2021, Marilyn Mosby was the Baltimore City State's attorney. Still, we sent these questions to the office currently headed by Ivan Bates, asking, does the SAO feel murder 1 and murder 2 were the correct charges to file against Allison based on the facts of this case, specifically when proving intent? Why or why not? Why was Allison not also charged with manslaughter? And does the SAO believe justice has been served for Whedon? Gary believes the answer to that last question is no. The mother not only in search of justice, but to ensure this doesn't happen to another family.
It's not fair to the family. It's not fair to her, like her life meant anything.
A spokesperson with the office acknowledged our request. We're still waiting on those answers. Allison is scheduled to be sentenced in April. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. The continued youth crime crisis has people who work and live in Baltimore on edge. One of the most recent cases, an attempted carjacking, sent a 77-year-old man to the hospital with brain injuries. It happened in Bolton Hill. That man was beaten during an attempted carjacking. Fox 45's Vincent Hill spoke with the man, spoke with those close to the man. They say the suspects didn't have to attack him.
A group of teenage boys jumped out and attacked them.
Do you think if they would have just said, hey, give me your keys, that your husband would have complied and gave the keys?
Probably, but they ambushed them and, they kind of came out of the blue on them.
Well, the surge in juvenile crime this past year is leading to change in Annapolis. Lawmakers putting forward a new plan aimed at holding children accountable for violent crime. Some of the major changes in the new bill include requiring police to provide written documentation of kids taken into custody, shortening the deadline for Department of Juvenile Services intake decisions, strengthening staffing for the DJS ankle monitor unit, to track kids on home detention, and allowing children under the age of 13 to be charged with crimes including firearm-related offenses, car theft, sexual offenses, and animal abuse.
Well, Governor Wes Moore and lawmakers are standing together, saying this plan is the right plan for Maryland and the right one to address juvenile crime.
These crimes seem to be consistently the issues again from police officers, from hearing from them. We're focusing on making sure that the system actually works to improve public safety and improve rehabilitation.
We need to make sure that actions have consequences, yes. And we need to make sure that our kids are getting the rehabilitation that they need.
Well, tonight we are joined by political analyst John Deedy to talk about what appears to be a shift for Governor Moore toward taking a tougher stance on juvenile crime. John, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
John, until this bill was announced, the governor and DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi seemingly had been in sync regarding juvenile justice policy. But at last week's news conference, the governor was standing with lawmakers pledging support. Is this a change in your estimation? How do you view this?
I view it as somewhat as a big change because the governor had been very silent on a lot of things. He had basically said, let the legislature deal with things. He really didn't lead on this. He kind of followed on this. And I think when he saw the reaction from the legislature, the hearings that have been held by various delegates on this matter, I think they realized they had to kind of get aboard with this program.
And we know Secretary Schiraldi was noticeably absent from the news conference. Part of the Democrats' proposal includes extending probation for young offenders meant to help break the cycle of violence. But DJS Secretary Schiraldi has really been a long opponent of parole and probation. If these proposals that are on the table pass, could we see some conflict between Schiraldi and the governor?
I think you'll see if they pass and Schiraldi can't get aboard with the program, tap on the shoulder, and he'll probably have to resign. And here's the other thing. The train has left the station in this regards. The Senate and House committees are both having public hearings this week on both bills related to this. This is fast in Annapolis. So this is going to happen. And now Mr. Schiraldi is going to have to make some decisions about, what do I do from here based on what I believe in, what I think should be done, et cetera.
Last week, John, Senate President Bill Ferguson kind of stated the obvious in saying that Mr. Schiraldi works at the pleasure of the governor. And if the governor and state lawmakers have come out with edicts, the secretary is going to have to follow them or look for another job. He essentially was saying that. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, one other thing I'll add to this. When you think about all this, it's amazing how times change in this regard. The fact that 2 years ago, this wasn't even on the table. What changed the dynamic? The election of Ivan Bates as city state's attorney. He talked about getting tougher on crime. Everyone got aboard with his programs. We saw last year the murder rate dropped dramatically in Baltimore. Everyone's talking about accountability. In many ways, they're following his lead for a very also simple reason. He's the most popular politician in the city of Baltimore. And many of the ideas he's proposing, the legislature is going all aboard in on.
And also just the massive rise in juvenile crime, all the cars that have been stolen, the voters really speaking out. All right, John Deedy, thank you again for joining us, giving us insight into this issue. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
State lawmakers are taking action following a Fox 45 News investigation that found a 15-year-old convicted of rape taking classes inside a Maryland public school. Project Baltimore's Chris Papps joins us live with more on proposed legislation that would prevent this from happening in the future. Chris.
Well, Kai, this recent Project Baltimore investigation is prompting outrage on both sides of the political aisle, and lawmakers have about 2 months left in session to get something done. Now, in late December, a 15-year-old entered a plea of second-degree rape in Harford County. Yet in January, after winter break, he was back in class at Patterson High School in Baltimore City. Under state law, a juvenile sex offender who is not on the sex offender registry cannot be removed from school unless there is an imminent threat of serious harm to the health and safety of other students and staff. The day after Fox 45 News broke this story, Delegate Nino Mangione, a Republican from Baltimore County, requested a bill be drafted to prevent this type of situation from happening again. Mangione says if a child is already convicted of a serious crime, that should constitute an imminent threat.
I think this is probably the single most important thing I can be a part of in Annapolis. This is about protecting the children.
Now, Mangione's proposed bill would create a list of juvenile offenses, one of which being a second-degree rape that would bar a student, Kai, from attending a public school in person.
And so, Chris, we know in the Patterson situation, and parents are fuming over this, they weren't notified that a convicted rapist was in the school. Is it possible we could see legislation that would require parental notification?
Yeah, sure. So Mangione's bill, Kai, that would prevent sex offenders and other juveniles with these serious cases from entering a classroom, and it would provide other alternative means for them to be educated, such as virtual learning or homeschooling. But Project Baltimore, we did reach out to every member of the Maryland General Assembly, and we asked them two questions. First, we asked if they support legislation that would require parental notification when a juvenile who is found to have committed a sex offense or other violent crime is attending a Maryland public school. The second question, should parents be notified that a rapist was attending Patterson High School? Now, we're going to have much more on this proposed legislation tonight on Fox 45 News at 10. We're also going to hear from Senate President Bill Ferguson, who represents Baltimore City, to find out what he is doing to try to make schools safer. Again, tonight at 10. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
The following segment is sponsored by Gilman and Bedigian.
Well, now that parents know there is an admitted sex offender attending school, many are wondering what type of legal responsibility the school system has to protect their kids. Tom Rogers spoke with a legal expert about the issue.
Project Baltimore recently reported a 15-year-old convicted rapist attending a public school in Baltimore. The claim, he raped 2 toddlers and faces a judge's order to keep the 15-year-old away from any minor his age or younger without direct supervision. Founding partner with Gilman and Bedigian LLC, Charles Gilman, says while the Baltimore City public school system can claim they did not know the 15-year-old was a sex offender, under the Maryland law, they can no longer claim that as a defense for him to be among the 1,300 other students.
It looks like the issue with the law is juveniles aren't required to report the same way adult sex offenders are. And it looks like there's just an error or a crisscross, and the law needs to be amended or changed slightly so that juveniles must report to the Board of Education, so that the Board of Education will find out that this particular juvenile cannot be mainstreamed or put into a school system. They need an alternative education.
What about any potential school liability then before that gets changed over? Is Baltimore City Public Schools or anybody, are they now responsible for if something happens, and how do you prove that?
I think the most important question, or part of your question, is what are they responsible for now? I think prior to realizing that there was an issue with the law, they may have had an out, if you will. But now that they know, because it's happened at least twice that we know of, they are responsible. This is foreseeable. Knowing that juveniles aren't required to report to the Board of Education that they're sex offenders, it's a foreseeable event, and therefore they're liable under the 4 prongs of the law.
Again, Gilman says now that Baltimore City Public Schools knows more about this convicted student, they will most likely move him to a virtual learning environment or face civil lawsuits. Tom Rogers, Fox 45 News.
Well, last week we asked viewers, should parents be told when a sex offender is attending a public school? 98% of those who responded said yes.
Families in Chile are running for their lives from a devastating wildfire. A first-hand look at the destruction that it caused.
It is a new campaign to help you quit smoking, and one woman says it really works. I'm Liz Bonus. We explain why just ahead.
Well, things are pretty quiet around the area with the exception of coastal flood advisories. It's going to be pretty chilly tonight. We have some much warmer temperatures coming your way before we're going to be tracking our next chance of rainfall. All that coming up.
Making headlines tonight, intense wildfires are devastating parts of Chile. Take a look at trying to escape those flames. You can see the town burning around them, embers flying through the air and even into the bus at one point. Passengers on the bus can be heard screaming and crying, just praying that they can make it out safely. And this is a look at that same area after the flames died down. At least 112 people have been killed. It's just devastation there. Crews are still working to sort through the rubble, put out small fires, and even search for survivors. The Housing Ministry of Chile says somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 homes were destroyed, leaving thousands homeless at this hour. Also making headlines right now, another safety issue for the Boeing company. This is around the 50 MAX 737 jets. Apparently they had misdrilled holes in the main body of the aircraft. Those planes had not yet been sold to airlines, and there is no safety threat to those already in circulation. This is the latest setback for Boeing, which includes a terrifying accident mid-flight when part of an Alaska Airlines plane blew off. The World Health Organization is meeting in Panama trying to form a new anti-smoking strategy. This year, the organization is looking into vaping as a way to get people to quit cigarettes. David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance is in Panama, fact-checking this meeting.
They kick out the public and they don't allow the media to report on what's going on behind closed doors. That's a huge problem, especially a taxpayer-funded organization.
The Taxpayers Protection Alliance is live streaming their own conference to recap the fact check with WHO's meetings. Those meetings run through Saturday. At the same time, the CDC is launching a new anti-smoking campaign in America. Medical reporter Liz Bonus is taking a closer look at how they're trying to get Americans to quit.
Hey there, everybody. The CDC has just kicked off its annual Quit Smoking campaign. It includes real stories of people who say if they've quit, anyone can.
Menthol cigarettes became my best friend. When you inhaled it, it was cool. And then when you blew it out, it was cool.
Angie Pepper says she started smoking at age 13.
My mom and dad both smoked, and I just used to watch my mom. And I watched everything she did. I mean, I saw the packages that the cigarettes came in. I mean, it was all attractive to me.
Now, as part of the CDC's annual campaign to quit, she has since learned the odds were stacked against her.
Menthol is an ingredient that's added to cigarettes by the tobacco industry that makes it easier to start and harder to quit.
But with the help of one of the now 7 medications approved to help people quit smoking, Dr. Christy Marinak says Angie is now smoke-free. The CDC has a team of experts that can help you find support and change your habits.
When I got up in the morning, I wanted to have coffee and a cigarette. And so when I got up in the morning, instead of even going to get coffee, I just automatically got my dog and went walking.
The big thing both of these women want us to know, there is free help and support.
Many people try to go it alone and go cold turkey, but you don't have to do that. There are evidence-based resources available at 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
We do have links online to these real people stories and the resources they provide. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
And Fox 45 invites you to join us for the Be More Healthy Expo this Saturday at the Baltimore Convention Center. The free event includes health screenings, cooking and dance demonstrations, and a chance to meet your favorite Fox 45 News personalities. We'll be out there. The Be More Healthy Expo runs this Saturday from 10 a.m. through 4 p.m.
And you can bet I'm going to be out there. See you there starting at 10. So come say hello. I love to meet everyone here at any time. And you'll get a chance to try this thing out. You can't see it. It's the green screen, but you'll get a chance to try it if you want to. So let's talk about our weather. It has been pretty easy to handle. 48 degrees right now. It's been fairly pleasant. This is very seasonable around the area. That's Towson showing that up. And tonight, well, it's going to be getting chilly again, just like we've been under clear skies, dropping to mid-30s by 10. We'll bottom out pretty cold tonight, around 28 degrees. And I think your Tuesday is going to be a little chillier than what we saw today. But that is the least of our problems that we're going to be having. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in California for a couple of good reasons. One is this is pretty important for them. They're getting their rain, they're getting their snowpack, but it is going to be great news for us because it's going to put us back into a pattern where we can get a little bit more moisture again. It's been a little while. It's been fairly dry. The plants, believe it or not, even when they are dormant, need a drink of water every now and then. Plenty down in Florida, not a drop to make its way up to our area, but we'll eventually get there. And somehow I skipped right past my graphics. Let's see if I can get to it. Well, never mind. You get a preview of the 7-day forecast. This is even better because once we get into Friday, we get our chances of rain to return. Now look at this, 50s by Friday. We'll be near 60 degrees by Saturday. And there's that time again, the Baltimore Health Expo, which I will be there at. And our chances of rain will kind of linger around as we move into the weekend. Now this is the caveat, is whether or not we're going to get a bigger storm system Sunday into Monday. The pattern is trying to show that we are going to be getting into a more tumultuous weather pattern, which means we could get bigger storm systems. But right now we're keeping the chances low just because the data is in complete disagreement. So stay tuned over the next couple days. We'll be fine tuning this, but this is very subject to change as we get into Sunday and Monday. Kai.
All right, Gerard, thank you, sir. Coming up at 5 o'clock, our live coverage of Marilyn Mosby's second federal trial continues. We're live in Greenbelt as the trial starts to wrap up. Our morning meteorologist, Justin Chambers, is not just a weatherman, he's also a pilot. And this weekend, Fox 45's Patrice Sanders mustered up the courage to join him for a flight around Maryland. Take a look.
Yeah, come on in. Come on into our little plane.
Don't say little.
Perfect.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think it's small.
We'll be up here doing our stuff.
I'm going to go up right now with him and just go up right now and just do one lap. I got a headset on you right back there. You just put it on. You can hear us.
Okay, come on, let's do it.
You want to do it?
Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Have fun.
All right, it's Patrice and Justin's maiden voyage. Parking
Oh, wait a minute, you gotta read the instructions.
What? It's called a checklist.
Okay.
Everybody does these. Ready to go?
Yes.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, let's go. All right, Patrice, Justin, great job, Patrice, up there. Outstanding. She's got her phone. She was a trooper. Courageous. I love it. And Justin's a great pilot. He's always talking about that. By the way, it did get hard to hear up in the sky, but Patrice and Justin luckily made it back safely, of course, after a scenic trip over Carroll County. Even saw Tom Rogers out there giving them support. Look at that. Look at that beautiful vista behind them. See that? Wow. Thank goodness for GoPro cameras. Now today you put this small little camera on the windshield, you can see absolutely everything. Patrice was right. It is snug in there. Indeed. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, new information surrounding a juvenile attack on a Butchers Hill woman, the charges we could see against a 12-year-old. Plus, a mayoral candidate voicing concern over the possibility of new luxury apartments downtown. The arguments that it would hurt Baltimore.
New developments surrounding the attack on a Butchers Hill woman. What we're learning about the charges against the young suspects.
Jury deliberations have just begun in the second federal trial of Marilyn Mosby. Our team is in court bringing you the latest live.
Plus, new action among lawmakers after a disturbing Project Baltimore investigation involving a 15-year-old admitted rapist in school. A closer look at the proposed legislation.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
They were asking that you be the lawyer, the judge, and the jury. Father God bless her, and only you know how.
A group supporting Marilyn Mosby outside the federal court in Greenbelt praying for a verdict in her favor. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Today, the defense and prosecution both made their closing arguments in former city state's attorney's mortgage fraud trial, and the jury is now beginning its work.
Let's go right to Mackenzie Frost. She's been in the court all day. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, the jury just starting deliberations within about 5 minutes or so. That came after the judge read significant instructions to the jury, going detail over detail over detail with the jury as these deliberations begin. Now, right now, it's unclear exactly how long the judge will allow these deliberations to continue this evening before sending the jury home for the night for a possible continuation of the deliberations tomorrow. But this comes after 9 days of testimony and pretty much all day today spent on closing arguments. The prosecutors and the defense giving their final pitch to the jury before sending it off and putting this case in their hands. Prosecutors outlining their case, going detail over the details when it comes to the documents included in this case, like the mortgage applications or the letter that Marilyn Mosby sent to lenders indicating she had been in Florida for 70 days, as well as going over the details of that gift letter that came from Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby. But on the flip side of that, the defense telling the jury that this is a simple case of families, and the defense telling the jury sometimes that can get complicated and messy. But they say that Marilyn Mosby did not knowingly lie on any of those mortgage applications. And now this is week 4 of this trial. We'll have to wait and see what the jury decides. We're live in Greenbelt. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Fox 45 has been following the years-long legal saga surrounding Marilyn Mosby since the beginning. For our full coverage on her case, head to foxbaltimore.com.
It's only a few years that we have these kids and are really able to affect change. So when you lose 6 months because DJS is ineffective, that is a tremendous amount of time for these kids.
Well, the two juveniles accused of attacking a Butchers Hill woman last November are now facing a laundry list of charges, including attempted car theft, assault, and robbery.
And that's according to the victim, who says initially she was told the teens would face no consequences.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has more on why the victim is calling the delayed action too little too late. Rebecca?
Yeah, while the victim says that she is relieved to finally be seeing justice served here, she also questions why it took 3 months to arrive, time she fears her attackers could be using to commit more crimes.
I felt like what happened was just, I keep saying being minimized, but it was.
After first being told her 2 attackers would face no repercussions.
Felt like those charges didn't represent what actually happened.
3 months after being tackled to the ground, punched, and her car keys stolen, an assault and robbery caught on camera in Butchers Hill, the victim only recently hearing back about potential consequences.
And I had no idea. I never expected that at all. I thought it was kind of done.
Julie, who asked we only use her first name to protect her identity, saying last week, without any explanation, she received this letter from the city state's attorney listing a dozen charges the 14-year-old suspect will now face.
I think they've pretty much put every possible charge on there.
Days later, she says a prosecutor called, claiming the 12-year-old would be charged with the exact same counts, despite at 11 years old, that same teen driving off with at least 13 stolen cars across Baltimore County. Each time, police reports obtained by Fox 45 reading, due to his age, the teen released without charge.
Oftentimes when these kids start stealing cars, they continue stealing cars.
Public defense attorney Roya Hanna, who has no involvement in this case, explaining under the current juvenile justice reform laws, children under the age of 13 can only be charged with crimes of violence, which doesn't include auto theft, but does include robbery.
As long as the top charge is a violent charge, then they can charge everything that is what is considered a lesser included count.
Leaving Julie to question why the charges took 3 months to come in.
It could be that the public outcry, but it could also just be that the Department of Juvenile Services went through their internal review mechanism.
A decision-making process that legally should only take 25 days for DJS to make. But Hannah says typically
they need extensions for every single report they have to produce. It's supposed to be 30 days, they take 90 days. There's a lot of different mechanisms that they can use to just sweep these things under the rug so they don't have to provide services. And I think this comes down to an issue of resources with the department.
Under a slew of new juvenile justice reform laws introduced just last week,
we need to make sure that actions have consequences.
Lawmakers demanding DJS staffing improve and intake decisions be made swiftly. In some cases, even turned over to the state's attorney immediately, instead of allowing repeat offenders to continue committing the same crimes over and over again, sending a message to the victims.
That I don't matter. You know, that what happened doesn't matter.
Now, that new juvenile crime bill that was just introduced last week would also allow auto thefts to be prosecuted once again, no matter the child's age. It is a measure that police and prosecutors are saying they hope will finally help curb the soaring amount of car thefts that we've been seeing over the last year. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Becca, thank you. In Baltimore County, 3 teens are under arrest for shooting a 16-year-old in Rosedale Sunday. Police say around 5:15 last night, a 16, 17, and 19-year-old attacked the victim, shooting him in the lower body. The victim was taken to the hospital. Police did not share his condition, but did say he was in stable condition. All of the teenage suspects are being charged as adults with attempted first-degree murder, assault, and firearm charges.
As Rebecca mentioned, last week, state Democrats unveiled their juvenile crime plan, focusing on a need for stronger consequences for young offenders. That plan would increase probation and require police to provide written communication or documentation of youth taken into custody. It also outlines changes for the Department of Juvenile Services, including a shorter deadline for intake decisions and more staff within the ankle monitoring unit. Now, that bill would also change a portion of the current juvenile crime code that now says children under 13 can't be charged with certain crimes. Among those are all firearm-related offenses, car thefts, sexual assaults, and animal abuse.
And there are questions about a potential clash of ideas between the Democratic plan and the Department of Juvenile Services. Part of the Democrats' proposal includes extending probation for young offenders. Democrats say it's to ensure juveniles have time to complete mandated programs to help them break that cycle of violence. But DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi has long been an opponent of parole and probation, outlining his views in his latest book. He has also made several public comments about juveniles, saying their brains aren't fully developed until age 25, and they shouldn't be introduced into the adult criminal justice system until that age. On Friday, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressed Senate President Bill Ferguson if Schiraldi could be a roadblock to the Democrats' plan moving forward.
Are you concerned that the Secretary of DJS may not be on board with the current policies or proposals being unveiled from the General Assembly?
We were there with the House Speaker and the Governor. The Governor is the chief executive. If he has confidence moving forward, I do too. He's the one that is charging his secretaries to implement the law. And so I think our job as the legislature is to hold everybody accountable.
We sent DJS questions asking, does Secretary Schiraldi support the proposal to expand the length of probation? What about the other aspects of the proposal? Why was he not in attendance for the news conference on Wednesday? To see the response and the latest on our ongoing investigation into the department, head to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, no justice for Janai Whedon. The mother of a murdered teen believes the city of Baltimore failed her daughter by improperly charging the teen's accused killer. Alexa Ashwell sat down with her mother and joins us live after questioning the city state's attorney's office. Alexa.
Yes, Janai Whedon was murdered back in 2021. At that time, Marilyn Mosby was the Baltimore City state's attorney. Just last week, a jury found Zachariah Allison, the man charged with Janai's murder, not guilty of first and second degree murder, but guilty of reckless endangerment, assault, and possession of a firearm by a minor, according to court documents back in August 2021. And following an ongoing dispute between two groups, Allison, who was 16 at the time, walked out of a home and, quote, began shooting indiscriminately. Investigators said Whedon was a half block away and fatally struck by one of those bullets. The mother questioning the charges.
To me, it's an insult. It hurts me because he's able to come back out on this charge, on the streets, and never be tried for it again, despite all the evidence that led to him and all the evidence that was there that could have, for manslaughter. This cannot happen again. It's just not fair. It is not no sort of justice. Definitely dealing with this day and time with juvenile crimes, with handguns and the assaults and things that's going up.
Again, back in 2021, Marilyn Mosby, the Baltimore City State's attorney, now headed by Ivan Bates. We sent these questions asking, does the SAO feel murder 1 and murder 2 were the correct charges? Why was Allison not also charged with manslaughter? And does the SAO feel justice has been served for Whedon? A spokesperson for the office acknowledged our request. We're still waiting on those answers. Allison is scheduled to be sentenced in April. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
State lawmakers are taking action following a Fox 45 News investigation that found a 15-year-old convicted of rape taking classes inside a Maryland public school.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps joins us live with more on the proposed legislation that will prevent this from happening again. Chris?
Well, this recent Project Baltimore investigation has prompted outrage on both sides of the political aisle, and lawmakers have about 2 months left in session to get something done. Now, in late December, a 15-year-old entered a plea to second-degree rape in Harford County. Yet in January, after winter break, he was back in class at Patterson High School in Baltimore City. Under state law, a juvenile sex offender who is not on the sex offender registry cannot be removed from school unless there is an imminent threat of serious harm to the health and safety of other students and staff. The day after Fox 45 News broke this story, Delegate Nino Mangione, a Republican from Baltimore County, requested a bill be drafted to prevent this type of situation from happening again. Mangione says if a child is already convicted of a serious crime, that should constitute an imminent threat.
I think this is probably the single most important thing I can be a part of in Annapolis. This is about protecting the children.
Now, Mangione's proposed bill would create a list of juvenile offenses, which would include second-degree rape that would bar a student from attending a Maryland public school in person.
And Chris, we know the Patterson situation. Parents and students were not notified of all of this. What about legislation that would require parental notification when an admitted or convicted rapist will be in class with your kid?
Well, Mangione's legislation, the one that he's proposing, that focuses on keeping violent offenders out of classrooms in person with the general population of students and creating alternative ways to educate them, which they have to be according to the Maryland Constitution. And that would be homeschooling or virtual learning. But Project Baltimore has reached out to every member of the Maryland General Assembly asking 2 questions. The first one, if they support legislation that would require parental notification when a juvenile who is found to have committed a sex offense or other violent crime is attending a Maryland public school. The other question we sent was, should parents be notified, or should they have been notified that a rapist was attending Patterson High School? Now, we're going to have more on this proposed legislation tonight on Fox 45 News at 10. We also spoke to Senate President Bill Ferguson, who represents Baltimore City, and the action he is going to take concerning the situation and to make schools safer. Again, that's tonight at 10. I'm Chris Papps, and this is Project Baltimore.
Chris, thanks. Last week, we asked viewers, should parents be told when a sex offender is attending a public school? 98% of those who responded said yes.
Coming up after the break, a debate is heating up in Baltimore County surrounding rezoning, declining and abandoned shopping centers. Fox 45 News takes a closer look at both sides.
Plus, the juvenile crime crisis continues to impact Baltimore residents. We hear from victims on what they want to see change in Annapolis.
We haven't seen much change around here in a little while, but it's on the way. Get ready to see some warmer temperatures to come our way. We're going to be tracking our next chance for rain as well coming up.
Controversy is building in Baltimore County over a proposal to rezone certain abandoned areas to residential and commercial spaces. The county council is set to make decisions on the legislation this month. Fox 45's Jessica Babb live in Lutherville showing us why this debate is heating up. Jessica?
Mary, the Baltimore County website says the Baltimore County Council will talk about this issue next week, and they could be voting on it by the end of the month. Council members have even posted and voiced their concerns. Wade Ketch posting on social media today saying this could lead to urbanization and give them less say in the decision-making process.
I found the legislation to be shocking.
It's a mixed-use zoning bill that's getting mixed reaction.
We think it is long overdue. This is the type of sea change that our county has been waiting for.
Baltimore County Council member Wade Ketch opposing a bill which aims to develop dilapidated commercial hubs.
This is going to affect people all across our county.
In the letter, he says more developments like large apartments would be allowed to pop up all along the York corridor without addressing the needs for infrastructure.
Having the developers be allowed to do it by right without regard for adequate public facility, overcrowded schools, sewer capacity, roads, things like that, and not having the county council involved seems kind of scary to me.
Not to mention, Ketch says county council could be bypassed in the development process for projects, something he says is, quote, shocking and disturbing.
It is a blatant attempt to strip the Baltimore County Council of their land use authority, and it severely limits the public's opportunity to weigh in.
While Baltimore County leaders say it's critical for economic development,
Baltimore County actually lags behind other jurisdictions.
Olszewski says if the legislation passes, community members could still give their input on projects.
Is limited to these specific areas. It's not as though this is going to open up floodgates. This is just an opportunity for us to finally channel in dollars into revitalization projects.
But the jury's still out if this bill will pass.
We know that that's an area that needs redevelopment. We want something good to happen there, but we also want it to be something that's thoughtful.
I did reach out to Councilmember Ketch, but he didn't respond for our request for an interview. But you can be sure as the council makes decisions and has these discussions, we'll let you know what they decide. In Baltimore County, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Jessica, thank you. And that brings us to our question of the day. Whose interest does Johnny Olszewski have in mind in Baltimore County? This poll just opened. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Good evening. It is another gorgeous day. We have sunshine again. It's almost a nice lag from the weekend that we're happy to have. A little chilly, but it's going to get a little bit colder as we move through tonight. Beautiful view here that we have from our sky cam looking over the inner harbor here. And as we head through the next couple of days, it's not going to change that much with the exception of a slight drop in our temperatures. So here's where we are right now, mostly low to mid 40s. Okay, so this is pretty typical for around here, very seasonable. And as we get through tomorrow, it's going to be another very similar day. It's going to start out kind of frosty cold, 28 degrees, warming up to only the low 40s throughout the day, maybe a few places touching the mid 40s. So we're shaving off a few degrees from the high temperature today. Now, when's the next big change coming? Well, we're watching way out west of us to see what's happening with that. A big series of storm systems is clobbering the west coast, bringing them rain, mountain snow. This is a good thing for them. It helps with their snowpack and their reservoir replenishment. Now, for us, it's going to mean that we'll see those storm systems, but they will be at a much weaker state, most likely, by the time they get here. One of them is tracking across the southern United States, bringing all that moisture to them. We're still high and dry up here in Baltimore, but it's going to be a little bit colder, so here's what we're tracking. The colder air is going to continue as long as we have these northerly winds, which will be the case not through today, but also tomorrow. We'll start to see a little shift as we get closer to Wednesday and Thursday. You see ahead of this storm system, the winds will shift out of the south. That'll continue to slide our way as we move into Friday. We'll warm up a bit. It'll get a little cloudier, but most of the energy out of this system is going to be wrung out, and it is going to be much weaker, so we're not going to see as much as, say, California and what they're getting. So we're talking about a mostly mostly dry frontal passage as we go through Friday. Now, we could see a little bit more activities move through Saturday. Now, this is the big question. Are we going to get a bigger storm system? One computer model, the European model we have, says there is going to be a big one that blows up across the Midwest, Great Lakes, and it'll eventually shift across the eastern seaboard, bringing a lot of heavy rain and wind. Snow is still a very big question mark. I'm not even going to mention that really as a possibility yet, but we're going to keep close eyes on it because at least it has a chance to change our minds on things. We're still 7 days away, but another model has really showed little to nothing. 7-day forecast, we're warming up. That's pretty much a guarantee. Health Expo on Saturday. Make sure you come visit. And by the way, I have to wish our team a happy National Weather Person's Day. I work with a great group of folks here. I've only been working with them for a week, but they're spectacular. They're wonderful coworkers and wonderful people. I want to wish Justin, Amy, Jasmine happy National Weather Person's Day.
And happy to you as well, Gerard. Well, making headlines today, King Charles III has been diagnosed with cancer. Buckingham Palace announced he will step back from public duties while undergoing treatment. A royal source says it is not prostate cancer, but did not elaborate further on the diagnosis. The news comes after the 75-year-old monarch underwent a procedure for an enlarged prostate last month. Still ahead, a bipartisan border bill surfacing in the U.S. Senate. The politics at large, plus the latest struggles at the southern border, raising concern. Nearly 4 months of war in the Middle East and hostages still remain. A closer look at where negotiations currently stand.
The road to the big game is sponsored by Royal Farms.
Well, the teams are now in Las Vegas for the big game. Kansas City and San Francisco both arriving at a private hangar early this morning. Players were greeted where you saw it, some iconic Las Vegas performers, a crowd of Elvis impersonators and showgirls. The two teams are set to square off at Allegiant Stadium this weekend. And the Japanese embassy in Washington, D.C. needs everybody to calm down because Taylor Swift can make it to the big game in time. Ever since San Francisco and Kansas City secured their spots, everyone was wondering, will Taylor Swift be able to make it to the game in time to support boyfriend Travis Kelce? Swift has concerts in Japan from February 8th to the 10th, and we know the game is on the 11th. To make sure fans were shaking off their concerns, the Japanese embassy tweeted, quote, "The embassy can confidently say that if she departs Tokyo in the evening after her concert, she should arrive in Las Vegas before the game begins. Noise regulations in Tokyo say that using public sound systems must end at 9:30 p.m. And since Japan is a day ahead in terms of the global day, it is predicted Swift will make it in time." Well, coming up after the break, the World Health Organization meeting to talk about efforts to get people to stop smoking, the alternative being proposed, and why some argue it's the wrong solution.
The issue of the southern border remains center stage on Capitol Hill. But will anything change? I'm Christine Frizzell with a look at why that question is now impacting the entire country.
Tonight, jury deliberations have begun in former city state's attorney's Marilyn Mosby's mortgage fraud trial.
And that is after closing arguments from both sides today. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Kurt Nachman, not affiliated with the case, but is speaking to us as a legal expert tonight. Kurt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The defense seemed to try to appeal to the jury's emotions a little bit today, telling them in closing that Nick and Marilyn Mosby were a couple for more than 20 years, and she may have trusted him for too much for too long. Do you think that will work with the jury?
No, I don't think that's going to resonate as well as the defense hopes it will. I think, I think one of the quotes that was out there was, remember there was love in the marriage, but you had Ms. Mosby testifying while she was on the witness stand that she found out about the resolution of the tax-related issues through a press conference. I'm not sure what sort of bedside manner or bedside talk that is in a marriage, but it's certainly not one that I think the jurors are going to believe.
Yeah, and Kurt, prosecutors, for their part, really hammered what they called willful blindness issue during closing arguments, telling them that Ms. Mosby didn't seek documentation that the tax liabilities had been taken care of before buying that condo in Longboat Key. How much of a punch do you think that could have from the prosecution standpoint?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't in court, but from having dealt with IRS-related tax issues in the past and preceding this case, I spoke with a former IRS agent. There are literally hundreds of notices that get posted, that get mailed to individuals who have tax-related issues with the Internal Revenue Service. So the paper trail is long, the paper trail is extensive, and it's significant.
And again, I know you're not in court, but do you think prosecutors met their burden of proof, persuaded the jury that Marilyn Mosby knowingly lied on these mortgage applications?
It certainly appears that way, but obviously that decision is one that's going to fall on the jury.
Yeah.
And any expectation or idea how long deliberations could take, Kurt, especially if we base it on the first trial?
I would expect at least a day or two. Undoubtedly, there are significant documents the jury will want to take a look through, thoroughly review. Certainly, there could be, as the government said in closing, a magic mail elf. I don't think they're going to come and take any of the documents away from this case, but certainly it could be a significant question from the jurors to see the notices that would have been available.
All right, Kurt Nachman, thank you so much for your perspective on this. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
We have continuing coverage right now of the juvenile crime crisis across Maryland. Crime involving teens over the weekend is causing concern from residents. Some say something needs to be done to hold young offenders accountable. Fox 45's Vincent Hill has a closer look at those concerns.
As lawmakers address juvenile crime in Annapolis, the effects of it felt on the streets of Baltimore.
And a group of teenage boys jumped out and attacked them.
In the Bolton Hill neighborhood, a 77-year-old man beaten during an attempted carjacking.
After they had been beaten, one of the boys demanded their car keys.
Perpetrated by a group of juveniles, the youngest.
A face of a 12-year-old.
Do you think if they would have just said, hey, give me your keys, that your husband would have complied and gave the keys?
Probably. But they ambushed them and, they kind of came out of the blue on them.
In East Baltimore, a similar ambush.
The aunt was robbed at gunpoint by 3 male juveniles. She's 78 years of age.
This woman describing the horrifying moments.
One came to my front and had here a gun. I'm going to die because a gun in my head.
But it's not just juveniles committing crimes, but also becoming victims. The sounds of gunshots captured on video captures the city's first homicide, 16-year-old Noah Gibson.
I love my son with all my heart. That was my baby.
Gibson, just one of several juveniles shot in Baltimore so far this year, including a 17-year-old shot in the face in the Bel Air neighborhood.
Units were following a blood trail. We lost the blood trail in the 3600 block of Clifton Park Terrace.
As the trail of juvenile crime is left behind,
there has to be consequences.
Those affected by it hope new legislation will pass and make a difference on the streets.
Right now, there's no deterrent, and there's nothing to prevent this from happening to anyone else at any time.
Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Now, there's a $30,000 reward for the assault on that 77-year-old man. All the charges Vincent talked about are unsolved.
Developing now, mayoral candidate Tharu Vignarajah pledging he will block proposed construction of luxury apartments in the Inner Harbor's public spaces if he were to win the election. Vignarajah, along with local economist Anaban Basu, saying building residential buildings on the public park is wrong and would have negative impacts on Baltimore.
We will not allow the most precious public space we have, certainly in Baltimore, perhaps on the eastern seaboard, to be turned into an exclusive resort for the wealthiest of the wealthy.
We have seen this from Baltimore too many times. Insider dealing and a lack of vision, and the results are what the results are.
Victor Raja is calling on Mayor Brandon Scott and Sheila Dixon to join this pledge.
There are new efforts tonight to put an end to smoking. Groups are now looking at the benefits of vaping, but not everyone is on board. Fox 45's Megan Gillen spoke to a taxpayer watchdog on the meeting happening today and why there are concerns over transparency.
Right now, the World Health Organization is meeting in Panama to formally discuss how to get people to stop smoking. And this year, the organization is looking into the merits of vaping as a way to get people to stop smoking. In an effort to fact-check this meeting, David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance is in Panama with his group, watching how this plays out. He laid out his concerns on Fox 45 Morning News.
First is transparency in this meeting. They've done this meeting about 10 or 11 times before. And what they do, Megan, is they kick out the public and they don't allow the media to report on what's going on behind closed doors. That's a huge problem, especially a taxpayer-funded organization. Then there's the science behind this. We all want people to stop smoking. My dad smoked 3.5 packs of cigarettes a day. And I mean, cigarettes killed him, let's be honest, right? And so we want people to stop smoking. Well, there are ways to do this, and you mentioned vaping. Vaping is 95% less harmful than traditional cigarettes, yet the World Health Organization isn't listening to the science. They are saying no vaping, no smoking, and it just doesn't make sense.
David, why the secrecy around all of this?
It's a great question, and because what they do is they are making decisions that really resonate throughout the globe and in the United States, and there has to be transparency, and they don't want people to see what's happening, and we've tried to get into these meetings. We've tried to get media into these meetings.
Well, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance is live streaming their own conference to recap and fact-check the WHO's meetings. Those meetings run through Saturday. I'm Megan Gillen, Fox 45 News.
We invite you to join us for the Be More Healthy Expo this Saturday at the Baltimore Convention Center. The free event includes health screenings, cooking and dance demonstrations, and a chance to meet your favorite Fox 45 News personalities. Again, the Be More Healthy Expo runs this Saturday, February 10th from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon.
Tonight, the list of Republicans opposed to a bipartisan border deal is growing.
They're speaking out after a small group of senators worked for months with the White House to come up with what some call the most sweeping proposals to our immigration system in modern history.
National correspondent Christine Frizzell lays out the debate taking shape now on Capitol Hill.
It's just the latest snapshot of the border debate consuming our country.
And I'm thrilled people are paying attention to what we've been dealing with for a long time.
This group vowing to, quote, take our border back, demanding the federal government do more, and siding with the state of Texas, which has taken over control at certain parts of the southern border. 14 Republican governors also showing solidarity Sunday.
Half of the governors of the United States have joined with Texas in our cause to make sure states can do everything possible to secure our border.
This standoff as the federal government has vowed to make major changes. A new bipartisan Senate bill sent to help end what's known as catch and release, where migrants are allowed to remain in the United States as they await their court dates.
Folks who do qualify for asylum will be on a rapid path, 6 months or less, to start a new life in America. And those who do not qualify will quickly be returned to their home countries.
The crisis has become a major political problem for President Biden, whose approval on the issue has remained low and is losing ground, down 5 points in a new NBC News poll.
This is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump over Joe Biden.
The former president hoping to run on his record.
I had the safest border in the history of our country. I built 561 miles of wall, and that was good. But I also got Mexico to give us 28,000 soldiers free of charge. Now we have the worst border probably in the history of the world.
In a post on X, Elon Musk calling it part of Biden's strategy to, quote, get as many illegals in the country as possible and legalize them to create a permanent majority, a one-party state. But deportation flights have resumed. Videos like this being shared by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, we've been hearing from GOP lawmakers that President Biden already has the authority to act and even shut down the southern border. The White House insists that's simply not true, with a major push to try to pass the Senate bill expected in the coming weeks. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
Coming up after the break, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky looks to make changes in leadership, why he argues